this kind of work is necessary in this culture. Do you understand what I mean by that? In cultures that have had the Orthodox faith for centuries, it's in a different place. But in this culture, Orthodoxy came to this country as a refugee and immigrant movement. It didn't come as a missionary movement. Orthodoxy, now watch this, gang, this is important for you to get. Everywhere Orthodoxy has ever gone as a missionary movement, it has become the dominant expression of Christianity in that culture. There are no exceptions. It's the reason why if you go to Alaska, Eskimos make the sign of the cross like this. Normal Orthodoxy is not what we've experienced all too often in this culture. The normal Orthodox life and the normal Orthodox experience, what normal Orthodoxy expects is that Orthodoxy becomes the dominant expression of the Christian faith in a culture where it's planted. That's normal. So the we happy few, hiding behind our little doors and now Father, don't make the sign too big on the road, because what if somebody sees it and what if they come in? Or what if they come in? What if they walk in the church? Oh no! Of course, I'm over the top, mainly because I enjoy doing it, and number two, I'm very good at it. But that mindset is death for our children and grandchildren keeping the faith. Because Orthodoxy is not a household word in this culture. Except, like I told you last night, when I told my dad I was becoming Orthodox, he was brokenhearted. Son, why would you become Jewish? That's normal in most Americans' minds. That's not normal Orthodoxy. Normal Orthodoxy always, this is a historical fact, folks. I'm not making this up. You can read it in the history books. Everywhere Orthodoxy has ever been planted as a missionary movement, it becomes the dominant expression of the Christian faith to those people. That's normal. That's the reason why when I tell people that America will one day be Orthodox, they look at me strangely. I always mark those people, by the way, because they're not the future. They're not. They're not the future. I had a wise man one time told me, he said, son, if you believe it can't happen, it won't. I think that's really true. All right, so last night you heard me tell about my story. I wanted to give you one last thing. It's something that we were talking about before the presentation began. One of the things that I told my dad about being when I was a Pentecostal and had a lot of fire and so on and so forth. One of the mindset, in fact, some of you have heard it in the Journey to Fullness video series. You've heard me tell this same story about the fact that as a Pentecostal I was on fire for the Lord, and we had a lot of zeal and we had a lot of emotion, and boy, we were very expressive, and I remember when I was a teenager, we'd go preaching on the street. Takes a lot of guts. And oh, we loved it when they cussed at us and they threw stuff at us. Oh, we were being persecuted. It was great. It was wonderful. It was very affirming. I loved it. So a lot of zeal. And so when my dad found out that I was becoming an Orthodox Christian, he looked into it and saw that they had liturgy and they made the sign of the cross. And son, this looks a lot like Roman Catholic. You know, you don't want to be a Roman Catholic. Come on, son. And I said, Dad, let me explain to you this way. As a Pentecostal, I had a lot of fire. But because the fire was wildfire, it kept burning my hut down. The church represents the fireplace for fire. Fire's good, unless it's uncontrolled, and then it's dangerous. If there are no parameters to the fire, it can get wild and be destructive. In fact, it normally will. Fire is very dangerous. If it's contained, then it's useful. It gives light, heat, you can cook. It's wonderful. But it has to have the fireplace for it to be useful. The church is the fireplace for our fire. And that helped him a great deal understand why I would hunger to be an Orthodox Christian. Well, because let's face it, folks, you make more money if you're on TV and you're building a big church, and you can have a mansion, and you can go to Tahiti every other week. It's great. I don't know a lot of Orthodox priests who have that kind of stuff. But there's a reason for this, folks, because there's a fullness here that makes all the difference in the world. And that's exactly why I did the Journey to Fullness video series, so that men and women could appreciate that it isn't about being correct or right in the Orthodox faith. It's about being full and complete and well-rounded and whole, grown up, mature. I told my dad one time, I said, Dad, here's the problem with me remaining an evangelical and a Pentecostal. I found the borders of this world. I'm done. I'm bored to tears. If this is all there is, I'm not going to make it. I need to find something that is worthy of the dignity of the human soul, that is worthy of the dignity of an uncreated God making men and women in His image to become in His likeness. I need a way of life that helps me support that awesome and powerful reality, that I was created in the image of God to be made in His likeness. I need a lifestyle. I need a mindset. I need a whole way of thinking about the world and about God that captures my attention for the rest of my life. I don't want minimum daily requirements. I want the most. And that, my angels, is Orthodoxy. And so that's why I converted. So this morning, we're going to talk about bad news. You ready? We're going to skip that since we already saw that, didn't we? Thank God. We're going to talk about bad news. And I want to ask you a question. How many Orthodox Christians are in the United States?
Not enough.
No, not enough. Amen. How many Orthodox Christians are there in the United States? How many?
2 million.
How many?
A little bit over 1 million.
A little bit over 1 million. Who else? Somebody else?
2 million.
2 million. Do I hear 3? No, just kidding. How many? 600,000. Anybody else? Some of you have heard me give a talk before, or you've watched the Journey to Fullness thing, and so some of you already have an unfair advantage. What do you think? What has been the number that they've tossed around for years? Huh? 1.2 million. Another, when I first came to Orthodoxy, they were saying, well, you know, there's 6 million Orthodox in the United States. 5 million Orthodox. And it's not true. There may be 6 million Greeks in the United States. And I never forget when I did this presentation, you're going to see the number. And the 1.2 figure is exactly right. But now here, let me help you. Does it change this number if I tell you, and does it go up or down? Maybe even your own thoughts. Does it go up or down if I tell you that we're defining an Orthodox adherent as someone who attends church twice a year? Does it go up?
Yeah.
This is the top number, folks. This is the top number. This is the number of Orthodox adherents in the United States that report going to church at least twice a year. 1.2 million people. That's less than 0.5% of the population of the United States. There are more practicing Muslims in the United States than there are Orthodox Christians. Right now. How does that make you feel? Ugh. Bad news. Bad news. And now you wonder why your kids think, well, what is so special about being Orthodox, for heaven's sake? There's not many of us. Surely something else must be better because everybody else is doing something else. So, we define this as this includes men, women, and children, by the way. All statistics from 5 interesting facts about Orthodox geography. Let me move this over, see if we can get all this on there. There we go. That's better. Alexei Krendach. By the way, if you've not seen a lot of the reports that Alexei Krendach has done, I encourage you to go to the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops website with all of his demographic stuff is available to you. It's absolutely fascinating. They are now doing what I think is going to really tell us a lot. They're now doing a demographic study of converts to the Orthodox faith, how long they stay in the church. And do their kids stay in the church as well? I'm getting ready for some more bad news. God help us. So, of that 1.2 million, a full 600,000 are in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. The Greek Orthodox Archdiocese has a population equal to all of the other jurisdictions combined. All the other jurisdictions combined, OCA, Antiochian Orthodox, Serbian Orthodox, Romanian Orthodox, whatever other flavor there might be out there, all of them, Ukrainian Orthodox, all of the other jurisdictions combined equal about half, and then the GOA is the other half. But here's the situation. And by the way, I'm a Greek Orthodox priest, and so I know the last name throws you off, but I mean, I'm a Greek Orthodox priest, promise. I really am. And the reality is this is the group that I know best. And so that's what I use as an example. But the averages tend to work out. Only 22% of that 600,000 attend church in any given week. Only 22%. Some of our other brothers in the other jurisdictions do better. The Carpatho-Rusins, I should say Rusin, shouldn't I? I don't want to get in trouble. 47% of them attend every week. 47% of the Bulgarians attend every week. And this means that in the whole country, any given Sunday, there are 132,000 Greek Orthodox Christians in church, which breaks down to about 2,600 Greek Orthodox Christians per state. Per state. Now, I will tell you this. I did this presentation in Miami, Florida. And I had a guy stand up and call me a liar. In the church, for heaven's sake. Father, that's not true. There are more Greeks in New York than that. And I said, you're exactly right, dear friend. But here's the kicker. They never attend church. And frankly, brothers and sisters, you cannot give the next generation something you yourself do not possess. So if you want to know why kids aren't staying connected to the church, it's because their parents are not connected to the church. Or they have gone through these situations. Now, that's no guarantee, trust me, I know. But the odds go up the more the parents are connected to the church. And the reality is that there certainly are a lot of Greeks in the United States. We had a priest last night here from the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and he was telling me about the thousands of Ukrainians that have come over into this country, but they're all Pentecostal. They're not Orthodox. They're all Pentecostal. Now, their families probably used to be Orthodox, but they haven't been Orthodox either for a generation or even less. They're all Pentecostals. So simply because there is an ethnic connection to the church, that's certainly a good head start. That's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. That's not a bad thing. But it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. It's not possible for it to be enough. I told a group of Greek Orthodox priests a couple of years ago that, fathers, if you give your kids Greek culture, they're going to abandon both Orthodoxy and Greek culture when they get older. They'll keep a few decorations because they like Yaya's baklava recipe. But that's it. If they go to church at all, they'll be C&E Orthodox. You know what C&E Orthodox, don't you? Christmas and Easter. And never forget, I always tell my people on Pascha, this is mean. But you know me already. You've already picked up on the fact that I'm not a nice man. So on Pascha, every church is packed to the gills. Most of the people, I don't even know who they are. And I always say during the homily for Pascha, before we get into the liturgy, before the midnight service, I do a short homily. And I always tell them Merry Christmas. Because that's when I'll see most of you again. Isn't that horrible? And I'm right. So the Christmas and Easter Orthodox, thank God they're there, folks. I'm not going to throw rocks at folks who come. When they come, they come. Glory to God. Thank you, Jesus. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But trust me, please don't be shocked when your children and grandchildren find it easy to disconnect. It makes it easy to disconnect from a faith that you yourself don't value in front of them. Do you understand? So, this reality makes these statistics even more sad. In the last 15 years, the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese has experienced a decline in the number of baptisms and marriages exponentially in the United States. But we do have one growth industry. Funerals. Funerals are up. But I mean, you can watch. We get statistics every year from the department, from a department in the GOA that measures all this: chrismations, baptisms, marriages, all this way. Every one of them. It's from 1992 till today. You can watch the steady decline, and it's every year. Funerals are the only ones that are growing up. And on average, 80%, this is an old statistic, it's actually more like 87% now. 87% of all marriages performed in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese are between an Orthodox and a non-Orthodox Christian. I even had a couple come to me a couple of months ago who the husband was Greek, or the fiance was Greek, and his wife was a Muslim. And they said, "Father, we want to get married in the church." And I said, "No." "What?" "But my grandfather." God bless your grandfather. May his memory be eternal. I cannot, it's not that I won't. I cannot perform a wedding ceremony between a Christian and a non-Christian. I can't. It don't take. You know, the mojo doesn't work. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't have that kind of juice. So I can't do it. I'm going to call the bishop. Oh, okay. That's fine. Call the bishop. He calls the bishop. That's what the bishop says. Can't do it. The young man was shocked and amazed, mainly because he didn't know enough about his own Orthodox faith to appreciate the fact that you can't. They thought it was a legal license to marry, but this is a divine mystery in the church. And now, the norm in the GOA, and I suspect it's the norm in all the other jurisdictions, Father, you can correct me, maybe not this high a number. But the reality is, most of our young people that are Orthodox Christians or raised in the Orthodox Church are marrying outside the faith. Some of you older Orthodox remember when that was not possible. Mom and Dad would hit the roof. What? Is he Orthodox? My future father-in-law, bless his memory, when I first started dating Presbyteris, is he Greek boy? Is he Greek boy? No. She said, no, Baba, but he is Orthodox. What does that mean? I'll tell one story on my father-in-law. Do you mind? Because it's illustrative of this reality. The reality is, folks, it's the reason why I said what I said last night, that the most important youth program in your church is a robust, exhausting, non-stop adult education program. You train the adults and you'll take care of the kids. If you leave the adults as uninformed as they crushingly are about their Orthodox faith, trust me, you can pour $15 billion a day into youth programs and it's not going to work. It doesn't work. All the basketball programs and volleyball programs and basketball tournaments and all those other things are wonderful and great and they're fantastic. They're never going to be enough to overcome what they're normally getting in the culture out there. We do not live in an Orthodox culture. If Mom and Dad aren't plugged in, trust me, it's very rare that the kids are going to be plugged in too. It's just what is. So adults, get educated. Read a book. We have more books about Orthodoxy in English than ever before. So Baba comes up to me. His name's Tim Demas, Ephthemios Dimas, from Carpe Nisi. And Tim is about this tall. Little Greek boy. Tim, first member of his family to come over to the United States. When he came over when he was 16 years old, worked in a little restaurant. Of course. It's actually a state law in most states that if you're a Greek immigrant, you have to work in a restaurant or own a restaurant. It's a rule. You can't escape it. That's what it is. So Tim knows that I'm going to seminary and I'm going to school and everything. He says, Barnabas, how many of the disciples were Greek? I said, Baba, none of them were Greek. What? I said, yeah, none of them were Greek, Baba. They were all Jewish. I said, Baba, even our Lord Jesus and our Panagia, our Theotokos, they were both Jewish. His eyes got this big around, mouth dropped open. And he was silent for a while. And he looked at me and said, finally he said, but not anymore. The reason why a Pentecostal pastor would become Orthodox is because I found a treasure worth selling everything for to possess. Until each of us comes to that place in our life, whether we are blessed to have a lifelong experience in the Orthodox faith or come to it later in life, every one of us have to come to a crossroads in our lives where we no longer settle for accidental orthodoxy. We no longer settle for nostalgic orthodoxy, but that we embrace the wisdom of the faith that changes the universe. We say it in our hymns. If you listen during Pascha, if you listen during hymn, 3 drops of blood recreate the whole universe. This is our faith, folks. And this is what we have to be informed about. All right, let's keep moving. Because I want to leave time for questions in this session, because this session is depressing. And I will warn you now, this session can leave you with the notion and the temptation to say, what's the use? The job's too big. This is going to be too hard. And you're exactly right if it all depends on your strength. But if we believe in what we say in the Divine Liturgy, we'll get to that. The very last phrase in this whole presentation today is about what you say every week in the Divine Liturgy. And then the question becomes, do you actually believe it? And I'm not talking about that you give mental assent to it. They say, oh yes, that's what we all believe. No, no, no. Do you live as if you believe it? I always tell people all the time, it's like me saying, if I say, I'm lifelong Orthodox, it's like me saying I'm the #1 Cleveland Indians fan, which has been frankly easy to do lately, although last night, God help us. Was it 22 or 23 in a row? 22 in a row. Last night, Kansas City got us 4-3. Dropi. Only the Greeks know that. The rest of you, tough. We're smarter than you. No, I'm just teasing. It's just a different language. So I'm the #1 Cleveland Indians fan in the world. Tell my buddy that. Oh, wow, what do you think about the new pitching rotation? Oh, I don't know who they are. But I'm the #1 Indians fan in the whole world. Oh, well, then you must have season tickets. Oh, no, I never go to the game. But I am there is nobody on the planet that's as big a fan of the Cleveland Indians as me. Oh, well, then you must watch the games on TV. Oh, no, I never watch the games. You almost want to look at them and say, you do know where Cleveland is, right? But it's exactly the same thing as saying I'm an Orthodox Christian, but I never practice the faith. Now, don't get me wrong, folks. There are cultures in this planet that have been so shaped by the Orthodox faith that the residual memory of the saints is still rippling through that culture. Glory to God. That's what Orthodoxy is supposed to do. It's supposed to so transform a society that they can't think of themselves differently than an Orthodox Christian. That's normal. But it's also dangerous. Especially if you start ever believing that nostalgia can take the place of faithfulness. Do you get that? Does that make sense? If you do get it, folks, it's a big deal. If you hunger for nostalgia more than you hunger for the timeless faith, you're going to lose. You're going to lose it. In fact, I know this is going to shock you guys. I can say some controversial things sometimes. I told a group of priests that I'm glad you guys are losing the faith. You deserve it. Because you forfeited it by confusing nostalgia for faithfulness, by confusing habit for practicing the faith. Now, that's nothing wrong with habit. There's nothing wrong with nostalgia. But brothers and sisters, habit and nostalgia they're not wrong, they're not bad, but they are decidedly too weak a foundation to pile on the glory of what orthodoxy really is. It's just too small. That's what I told my dad all the time. I said, Dad, it's not that I believe what I had before was wrong. That's not it at all. It was too small. I started pouring in all this timeless wisdom from the faith, and it busted that old box out. Wasn't room for it in there. Same way with nostalgia and habit. It's good to have nostalgia. It's good to remember. One of the things that I fell in love with Orthodoxy was that it had a communal memory that stretched back beyond my own birthday. I hungered for that. A community that felt connection all the way back to Adam and Eve, for heaven's sake. But if that becomes a substitute for a purposeful practice of the faith, brothers and sisters, make no mistake, all of that good stuff becomes ugly and unsatisfying. Then the kids leave. All right, so interestingly, the larger parishes, the lower the average of members attending each week. The average GOA parish chrismates 1.2 people a year. We're not even keeping up with our funerals. This is bragging. So what? You know how arrogant I am. I'm busting that curve all over the place. I love it. Every year. By the way, one of the reasons why is because we use our festival as an evangelism tool, not a fundraising tool. Our festival is used. Listen, guys, I can't justify having 10,000 people on our property and not ask them to become Orthodox. That doesn't make sense to me. They're here. It's a captive audience. They're full of our wonderful food and they've enjoyed the dancing. Hit them while they're happy. It's supposed to be funny, folks. Trust me, it's okay. It doesn't make sense to invite people to come into our church and see all this beauty and then say, okay, have a nice day. No. We assume every person that comes to our festival wants to be Orthodox. We assume that people within a 20-minute driving distance of our church want to be Orthodox. We assume that. Now, we may be wrong, and we've been proven wrong a few times, but for the most part, our attitude is, if you are within 20 minutes drive to our church, we assume you should be Orthodox. And we treat you that way. What does that mean, Father? Do you go knocking on doors? Not yet, although I'm not beyond it. But the point is, when they come to us, we say, hey, have you ever thought about it? Would you like to know more? Last year changed, but the previous years, a full 90% of our new families that came to St. Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene Greek Orthodox Church came because of our festival. 90% of our new families came because of our church festival, because there's a little piece of paper that we ask them to fill out because if they take a church tour. And we say, thank you so much for taking our church tour. We have a gift we'd like to mail you. Please fill out your name, address, and phone number, and email information. Oh, and by the way, there's a little box that says, I'd like to learn more about Orthodoxy. If you check that box, we'll invite you to a Journey to Fullness class that's starting right after the festival. Folks, this is marketing 101, gang. Come on. You can't, what are you going to do? Don't be a religious tease. Don't be a religious tease. Don't have them come in here and see all this beauty and then just say, great, good luck. They may be hungry for what you got. Feed them. Anyway, so 6 in 10 of every Orthodox youth going to college will leave the church during their college years. Now, folks, this is not just the Orthodox. 60% of most Christians, when they go to school, will disconnect in some way or fashion from their religion of their youth. By the way, did you know that the United States is the #1 nation in the world where people change the religion of their youth later on? Why do you think that is, by the way? Why do you think it's so easy in the United States to change churches, change religions? It used to be years ago, if you were a Methodist, by God, that's the way you were for your whole life. If you were a Presbyterian, well, I can't imagine anybody wanting to be a Presbyterian, but if you were a Presbyterian, we used to call them the frozen chosen when I was a Pentecostal. I used to tell a Presbyterian pastor friend of mine, I said, you know, you guys are going to heaven first, don't you? He said, what do you mean? I said, yeah, the Bible says the dead in Christ will rise first. You guys are Isn't that great? That's so funny. It's mean, don't use that. But I mean, it's funny. But if you were a Presbyterian, that's the way you were. In fact, if somebody asked you, you may never go to church, but if somebody asks you, what are you? Oh, I'm a Presbyterian. But in the United States, especially in the last 25 to 30 years, even actually 50 years ago, people growing up in one church but going to another church has now become very, very common. What do you think that is? Searching, that's one thing. That's very important, by the way. What else? Mobility is another thing. Maybe there's not a church that was like your church growing up.
Freedom.
Awareness. I mean, goodness gracious alive. Social media. By the way, gang, trust me. The answer, well, that's just the way we do it, won't work with your kids. They won't work with your kids, and simply because they can get on the internet and find an answer. It may not be a right answer, but they can find out stuff. So when you say, well, that's just the way we do it. By the way, you know what the 7 last words of a dying church are, don't you? We've never done it that way before. All right, so what else? Seeking, lots more information. What else? There's a fundamental characteristic of American culture. What is it? Freedom. Marriage is another thing. By the way, do you know that for the most part, the husband will become the religion of his wife more than vice versa in this country? What else? Somebody else.
My church changed.
My church changed. They're not like they used to be. Go ahead.
I was just trying to think of what it was someone just said to me about organized religion.
Oh yeah, I love that. Well,
they don't like organized religion.
Then tell them they need to be Orthodox. We're the most unorganized group of people on the planet. If you don't like organized religion, Orthodoxy is the faith for you, baby. What else? There's a fundamental characteristic of American life that feeds this. And it's neither good nor bad. It's just what it is. Go ahead.
Consumerism?
Say it again.
Consumerism?
Consumerism is it. That's it. Gold star. You remember? Some of you don't remember this. You're too young. But some of you who are in my age or older, Burger King. My first job, by the way, while I was in high school, was working at a Burger King. And it's a lovely jingle. It says, hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, special orders don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us serve it your way. But my point is this. The fundamental characteristic of American society is consumerism. Where are you getting your needs met? Where are you treated like the best customer? It is so ingrained in our culture we don't even think about it. Why do you think they have sales? Because you foolishly think, why, you can save $20 today. No, you're going to spend $80. You're not going to save any money when you go to a sale. You're going to be spending money. Stay home and you'll save money. But my point is that this concept of consumerism is at the very heart of our culture. It is ingrained in our kids. Every day they're looking at a branding situation on their iPad or iPhone. And they are more loyal to their brands than they are to their faith, because they know more about their brands than they do their faith. Now, folks, this is what we're up against. This is reality. Hide from it. Put your fingers in your ears. No. Denial isn't just a river in Egypt, by the way. It's a real thing. You can live in that fantasy that, oh, this isn't true, and you can continue saying goodbye to your kids and your grandkids. But if we're going to deal with this, we're going to have to be awake to it. So, they're going to leave the church. Now, some will return. But when they do return, they'll become the C&E Orthodox. Most of the time, they'll come or they'll go to funerals or weddings. But they will not be regular attenders of an Orthodox worship service. By the way, folks, let me tell you this. And this is something that you also need to be cognizant of. Being Orthodox is the most difficult form of Christianity in the world. It's a lot of trouble. Fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays, give me a break. I'm a murderer. I do anything I want, bless God. What do you mean are you telling me that religion is supposed to even affect the way I eat? You'll never tell it by the way I am. But I mean, the point is, the reality is, yeah. Orthodoxy is the most demanding form of Christianity on the planet. Period, full stop, end of discussion. You're never going to be Orthodox by accident, ever. If you're going to be, if you're authentically Orthodox, it's going to be purposeful. And if it's not purposeful, it won't stay Orthodox long. Then it'll be more like, I'm a fan of Macy's department store. That's the depth of loyalty that you'll have. So the reality is, these statistics offer a stark picture of the future of our churches here in America. By the way, do you know that they say that Orthodoxy is the fastest growing expression of Christianity in the United States? But do you know what the truth is? The truth is, Orthodoxy is shrinking at a slower level than all of the other American expressions of Christianity. 2 years ago, the last Episcopalian in America was born. Let that sink in. What do you mean by that, Father? The Episcopalians are hemorrhaging humans so fast that probably the last person who will be an Episcopalian was born 2 years ago. On average, mainline Protestant denominations are shedding between 20 and 25% of their population every year. I even told you last night about the big mega churches you see. They look so successful, they look so prosperous, and by the way, they are successful and they are prosperous, but on a scale measured by American consumerism, not about fidelity to the timeless faith. They turn over their congregations on average every 5 years. Their back door is usually busier than their front door. That's the reason why they have to keep things popping and moving and have the best praise band and the good smoke machine and the good lighting and the good technology, because they have to keep those customers coming. It's the world I grew up in, so folks, I can talk about my family. Now, you don't do it, but I can talk about my family. That's the tribe I grew up in. Those are my people. That's the reason why I'm so convinced that they desperately need and even want Orthodoxy, even though they don't know it yet. But I'm here to tell them. So, that's bad news. Don't you agree? But let me ask you a question. You ever been to the doctor? You ever been to the doctor? Those of us who are more experienced, we're on a first-name basis, aren't we? What is the key part of getting better from any disease? What do you think? Diagnosis. The key part of getting better from any illness is a proper and thorough diagnosis. If you don't have a proper and thorough diagnosis, will the medicine that they give you make you better? Maybe a little bit, but not to the point where you regain your health. Brothers and sisters, you do understand that the Orthodox Christian faith is at its heart a spiritual therapy. You understand that, right? It's a spiritual therapy to heal the woundedness of you being disconnected from your Creator. That's what Orthodoxy is. That's the reason why we call the church a spiritual hospital for illness. Disconnectedness. You ever had a lamp before? You ever had a lamp in your house? You know what a lamp is? If you unplug the lamp, what's going to happen every time you turn the switch?
Nothing.
Nothing. Why? It's disconnected from its power source. So what good is the lamp? Maybe a pretty lamp, don't get me wrong. I've seen beautiful lamps. But is it just for decoration, or does it have a purpose? Yes, it has a purpose. What's the purpose? Give you some light. But if you don't plug it in, it'll never give you light. Human beings were created in the image of God. The Scripture literally says, what does God say? What does the Scripture say in Genesis? Which is one of my favorite books in the whole Bible. We're doing a study in Genesis at our parish, and we've just finished half of Genesis. It's only taken us a year and a half. We expected another year and a half to be done. It's really cool. We spent most of the time on Genesis 1, 2, and 3. Because, frankly, I took that in seminary, and I took it from Father Eugene Piniuk. I don't know if any of you guys, Father Eugene teaches at Holy Cross and at St. Vlad, so he's a bivocational guy. He's literally insane. The man is crazy. Crazy brilliant. So he does the first 3 chapters of Genesis in our Genesis study, and I'm going, why do we need the rest of the Bible? Everything's here. So God creates humanity in Genesis, and what does the Scripture say? That God forms man out of the dust of the earth, and then what does God do? He breathes what? He breathes where? He breathes into man. And man, this is great. You know what the Hebrew literally means? Man becomes a living breath of God. Humanity becomes a living breath of God. And so, God creates Adam, and then God says it is not good for Adam to be alone. Now we're going to run, gang, listen, if it gets real too much for you, throw your life preserver back to John 3:16. We'll be back in a minute, I promise. But we're going to get a little bit deeper than ankle deep, okay? You ready? So God notices that what's the first thing that God tells Adam to do? Do you remember? What does God say for Adam to do? God gives him a specific task. Name the animals. Isn't that interesting? Why did God do that? By the way, folks, this is free. this is extra stuff. So you guys this is bonus stuff. Why did God do this? Why did God want Adam to name the animals? Didn't God know what the animals were? So why did God do it? What's the purpose of Adam naming the animals? Say it again.
So he would know.
Take over.
So Adam would know. Interesting. Very, very good. Important. Good insight. What else?
Dominion.
Dominion. God had given dominion to Adam over the creation, over not just the animals, over our creation itself. He tells Adam to tend the garden as well, to take care of it. God teaches Adam to name the animals so that Adam will understand that in knowing what something's name is, you see what its purpose is and what is at the heart of its real identity. If you can name what a thing is, you have an insight into who that thing is. And so, God is teaching Adam to do what? Do you think God didn't need the information? Adam needed the information, but why did Adam need the information? I know I'm making you work, guys. I'm sorry. And it's early, and some of you haven't had coffee yet. I apologize. So why? Why does Adam need to do this?
To understand the world?
To understand the world, but not just to understand the world, but also begin to develop the skills to be in relationship. Because what's the creation? What's the book of Genesis about? Book of Genesis is a story about the creation, not of the world. That's a secondary thought. We get everything, we get the whole creation created in the first few verses of Genesis 1. And then everything else from Genesis 2 all the way through Revelation is about God's relationship with mankind. So what does Adam need to learn how to do? Adam needs to learn how to be in relationship with his environment and with his Creator. Both and. That's why we make the sign of the cross. Heaven and earth, and all between us as well. And then what does God discover about, or what does God want Adam to discover about himself? Shouldn't be alone. I mean, all the other animals, look at them. That's a boy cow and a girl cow. Well, the boy cow is a bull, Adam. Oh, okay. A boy llama and a girl llama. But what about me, God? So what does God do? He gets some more dirt and he breathes in, he creates another creature and he breathes in. No, what does he do? Wait a second. Do you mean to tell me that in Adam was both maleness and femaleness until God separated them? Kind of like God separating the earth from the water, God separating the earth from the sky. The whole of the creation story is about God pulling things apart so that they can learn how to get back together again. Isn't that cool?
It is.
And it's hard work. I don't know if you've ever been married. I mean, every day that I wake up and my wife hasn't smothered me in my sleep, I figure, yeah, good day, good day, good day. A couple of times I woke up and she was poisoned. No. It's hard work to be in communion. But the whole purpose of God creating humanity was so that he would learn how to be in communion. And then what does God tell Adam and Eve?
Go forth and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply, make more little babies, but he also tells them about the garden that they're in. What does he tell them? You can have everything but
the fruit of the tree of life.
The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There were 2 trees in the garden, right? Two trees. One was the tree of life, and the other one was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What happened?
He blew it.
He ate from the wrong tree.
He ate from the wrong tree. He ate from the wrong tree. What happened? Careful. How did what was the events that led up to them eating? Satan tempted them in the form of a serpent, a snake. You snake, you. What does the snake say to Eve, our mother? You're not really going to die. God's got something, God's hiding something from you. God's not really good. God doesn't really care about your benefit. He's holding back. This tree's beautiful. Fruit's delicious. You should try some. God's afraid you're going to be like him. That was so stupid. God has always intended to make us like himself. One of the fathers of the church actually said that the incarnation of God becoming flesh is too wonderful to simply been caused by a mistake in the garden. It would have happened anyway. God always intended to become flesh to be with us because he loves us. So what does Eve do? I prefer to think of it as a pomegranate, not an apple. Forgive me. Don't ask me why. I just think the word pomegranate's cool. So they eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then what does Eve do? She gives it to Adam because it's natural to be in communion with someone who's like yourself. And so Adam eats, and what do they discover?
They're naked.
No. You got to use the southern way. They're naked. Naked is the statue of Michelangelo's David. That's naked. No, these folks were naked. It means they was up to no good. And so what happens in the garden? God always walks with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. He's teaching them how to be in communion. But God says to them, if you eat of don't eat of this tree. If you eat of this tree, I'll kill you. Is that what he said? Well, no, what did he say? If you eat of this tree, you'll die. Folks, if you get the difference between those two realities, you'll understand why orthodoxy is the fullness of the faith and nothing else. God never says, if you eat of this tree, I'll kill you. He says, if you eat of this tree, you'll die. It was a warning, not a condemnation. So they ate of the tree, and they discover that they're naked. And so they try to cover themselves. God is walking in the cool of the day. Adam, where are you? By the way, did God not know where Adam was?
Oh, sure.
So why is God saying this? Is he teasing? No. He needs to know. He needs Adam to understand how lost he is. Adam finally comes out of hiding. Why are you hiding, Adam? Well, I was naked. Who told you you were naked? Who told you you were naked? Well, the woman you gave me, Lord. Isn't it interesting? By the way, who does Adam blame? Who does Adam blame for his... He does not blame Eve. No, he blames God. He blames God. Lord, it was that woman you gave me. Because the lie of the serpent had taken root in men's heart. God is at fault here. It's God's fault. Adam does not blame his wife. Adam blames his Creator. And so the war starts. And then what does God do after they've broken the commandments to not eat of the tree? By the way, they could have eaten of the tree of life. Things would have been much different. But they didn't. They ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why do you think that was forbidden? Do you think God... What is it?
They weren't ready for the tree of life.
Father Deacon, live forever. May your tribe increase. That's it. The whole purpose of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was to teach Adam and Eve, guys, you've got to grow up first. Let's spend more time together so that you can love me as much as I love you, and you can learn to trust me, and you can learn to believe in me, and you can learn that I'm trustworthy and that you're meant for greater things. The tree is there to tell you what's going to be coming later, not now. They didn't have any belly buttons. They were young. So what does God do? What does God do with Adam and Eve?
Expels them.
He expels them. He throws them out of the garden. Furious that they would have the temerity to break his rules. Out with you. You're going to suffer now. Ha ha ha. No. What does the Bible say? The Bible says that God in the council of the Holy One says, see, the man and the woman have become like us, knowing good and evil. Watch! This is going to be on the final. Seeing this, lest they put their hands to the tree of life and live forever, let us send them out of the garden. Your loving Father could not countenance the notion that we would have been sold into slavery for eternity by eating of the tree of life and living forever in a fallen state. So what did your loving Father do? He grabbed those babies and put them as far away from harm's way as he possibly could. Now, doesn't that change your view of God? Doesn't that change the narrative that we all too often hear? I have a buddy of mine who's an atheist. He's a lousy atheist, but he's an atheist. At least that's what he claims. And this guy's a brilliant guy. He does all this weird sports stuff like hang gliding and skydiving. He loves that stuff. He's over in what's the name of the country over there? Up in the mountains in China. That's where the Dalai Lama, Mongolia. Yeah, he's in Mongolia right now doing some hang gliding from some of those mountains. Bizarre. But he told me one time, he said, Barnabas, I don't get it. You're an intelligent guy, well-read. I don't understand how in the world you can believe in God. I said, okay, well, Jim, tell me about this God you don't believe in. So he started describing Zeus or Superman. Going, oh, Jim, I'm an atheist about that God too. I don't believe that God exists. What do you mean? I said, no, that's not God. We've got too much of this culture, folks. That's the reason why people aren't Orthodox. They don't understand that God's not angry at them. They think God's mad. They think, in fact, your kids sometimes think, oh, well, God's going to be disappointed. But let me ask you this. How many people want to hang around somebody that's mad at them? You want to hang around somebody that's mad at you? I mean, maybe you do, but you need to seek help immediately. Do you want to hang around somebody that's disappointed in you? How dare you treat me this way? Do you want to hang around somebody like that? No. I don't blame these kids for not wanting to be around a God that's the way they've been taught to think about it. But that God doesn't exist, folks. That's Zeus or Superman. And I know I'm a Greek Orthodox, but we don't really worship Zeus. I swear, I promise. Aphrodite? No. Mars? Any of those other gods. We don't believe in those gods. The God we believe in loves His creation so much, He sends them out of the garden to protect them. But here's the good news. During Pascha this year, I want you to listen to some of the hymns where the way to the tree of life is open again. This is the beauty of your Orthodox faith. In the beginning, our mother, Eve, took dead fruit from a living tree and ate it, and we died. But now our Panagia, the second Eve, plucks living fruit from a dead tree, and we live. The tree of life is now open for us because of Jesus Christ. I leave this with you at the end of the bad news to tell you there's good news coming. And we can talk about theology, and that's great and that's wonderful, but there are also, in the second session, there's going to be practical ways that your community can put this stuff into concrete action to make men and women thirsty and hungry for the fullness of the faith, instead of allowing them to fill up on the junk food of the American religion that we have so much of today. That's the promise I'm going to make you for the second session. But right now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm tired of listening to my own voice. So I want to listen to your voice. I want to hear your questions or your comments about this bad news. And I'd like to hear your stories. So the floor is yours. What do you want to talk about? Ma'am.
I came from the Serbian church. I don't know why I do this every time.
Well, it's okay, dear. It's good. Emotions are God's gift to us, so use them. We just keep them in the fireplace so they don't kill you. Okay.
Well, my sister, we were actually baptized Presbyterian. I know. It's because that's what my parents
Did they use ice water? No, I'm just teasing.
I don't remember. Anyway, so it was my aunt who actually brought me to the Orthodox church, and we went to the Serbian church when
Right.
I moved closer to her. She
Right.
asked me if I wanted to go. And I went ever since.
Thank God. Welcome home.
Anyway, I always took my kids to church.
Right.
Silly. I don't know why.
No, it's not silly. It's a mother. It's a mother. You're supposed to weep for your kids. It's okay.
Anyway, I moved right on the corner from here, and the kids kept saying, "We need to look at that church, Mom, because it's all in English," and blah, blah. And I was the one having a hard time making the change.
Sure.
But we did it, and we came here. And then all of a sudden, my kids were like, "We don't want to go here. We want to go back to the Serbian church." And I'm like, "Oh no, we're staying here."
No, you got me into this. You're going to fill it in. Okay.
I mean, we're staying here. And the reason that they wanted to was because this church required a lot of them.
Yep.
And the Serbian church did not.
Didn't. All you had to do was do nostalgia. Yep.
Exactly. So here we are, we're trying to fast, we're trying to do all these
Amen.
things. And they didn't want to do it.
I don't blame them. I don't
And so
either.
then I fought with them from then on.
Amen.
And then as soon as they went to college, kaboom.
They were out.
They were
Yep.
out.
It's okay. All who wander aren't lost. But I'm going to tell you what, gang. If you think for 1 second that being a purposeful Orthodox Christian is popular, you live in the wrong century. We live in a culture that is intoxicated with its own passions, to the point that they are now calling an intoxicated passion a virtue. Orthodoxy has a different message for that world. Orthodoxy lovingly says, folks, you do realize you're killing yourselves, right? We don't want you to die. Here's the path to life. But we live in an age, one of the great church fathers said that there will come a day when men will be mad. And they will grab you and they will say, "You must be mad. You are not like us." Welcome to the 21st century. They look at us like we're crazy because we do all this stuff. I mean, come on. Midnight, marching around a building, give me a break, right? And not only that, you got these guys dressed funny and they're carrying smoking eggs and they're swinging at stuff and they've got banners that they're carrying. What is that about? Now, don't get me wrong, I love a parade just like the next guy. But let's do it at 10 o'clock in the morning. Let's don't do it at midnight, for heaven's sake. And fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays. This is a lot, but I'm going to tell you this. What I'm discovering across the country as I'm going and doing these talks is that the younger generation isn't so much turned off by the hard work as they are turned off by what they perceive to be inauthenticity. They want to see it authentically practiced in the communities that they are drawn to. Did you know that the fastest growing kind of Roman Catholic young people in the United States today? Traditional Latin Mass Roman Catholics. Bizarre. What about it? What about these millennials? They're supposed to be snowflakes. They're supposed to you know, just, I need a safe zone and I need a counselor for my triggered mentality. Now that exists, don't get me wrong. But more and more kids are looking for authenticity, and when they see that, Mom, they will not forget what they had. Sir.
Well, let me start with you talking about the Indians. You said Utica or something like that, and Maria was the only one who understood you.
Oh, yeah, the Greeks, yeah, the Greeks, yes.
That tells you something.
It does.
About the Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm.
And language has always been a barrier.
Yep.
There was a priest at St. Mary's Romanian Orthodox Church that got us to come to this church. He said, "This is a church for you, Ray."
Yeah.
Because I grew up in the Romanian church.
Right.
But I didn't speak Romanian.
Right.
I almost hated to understand people, even though I did understand.
Sure.
And I had to go through services. I had no idea what was going on.
Exactly.
And they wanted me to go to Romanian school so I could learn Romanian. There's a culture of what the Romanian culture was, what the Greek culture was. And they brought that culture to the United States.
Yeah.
But then came communism. And people saw the communists coming in. They got out of the country if they could.
Sure.
Where do they come? United States.
Come here. Yeah, exactly.
They brought what they did in Romania, in Greece, all these other countries to this country.
Amen.
And they kept it to themselves. You know, a black person, would they come into an Orthodox church?
Exactly.
Heavens, no. They're black. How about Oriental?
Yeah.
Heavens, no.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you go to a Korean Presbyterian church if it said outside, "Oh, this is a Korean Presbyterian church"? Who do you think goes there?
Koreans.
Koreans.
That's right.
Exactly. Go ahead.
And so it wasn't until I came to this church that, and this was my first Easter in this church, I understood.
Hey, folks, I'm going to tell you what. There is absolutely no way that we're going to live in a multicultural society like we have here and avoid this issue. You're going to have to deal with it straight on. You're going to have to deal with it honestly. And you're going to have to deal with it in such a way that communicates to the young people that you're not hiding from the truth.
But the church has got to do that.
The church, well, but we're the church though, brother.
You've got to unite the Greeks, the Romanians, the Serbians.
Brother, I'm going to tell you what right now. I don't see how in the world the Greeks and the Romanians are going to ever get along. But that's just me.
But that's what people outside of Orthodox
they're hungry for it. Yep.
Your church isn't united itself.
Yeah, exactly.
You're fighting at each other. You point fingers at each other.
I will tell you this.
My service is better than yours.
Well, My service is better than, I'm just teasing. But the reality is, you can't hide from this. You can't hide from this. The most effective way to deal with this is to deal with it. Don't hide from it. Don't pretend. There's a reason why, though, I use some Greek in the service that I have in coming. Do you know why? This may be a little controversial, but that's all right. It wouldn't be the first time today. I use some Greek in the service because my converts desperately need to know this didn't come just to them. It's been around a long time. And they need the humbling reality that they received this as a gift from another place. They need that for their own spiritual formation. They need it. And I answered my folks, because I had folks fuss at me about not using enough Greek in the service. And I answered my folks, I said, folks, I'm going to tell you when I'll know that we fixed this problem. When Nico and Maria bust into my office saying, Father, I need to speak to you. Okay, what is it, Nico and Maria? My friends, fellow members of this church, Chad and Buffy, don't understand the liturgy. We're fed up. What is it, Nico? What do you want me to do, Nico and Maria? We're fed up with all this Greek. We insist you start using more English so that Chad and Buffy can know what's going on. And then, well, let me finish. And then, Chad and Buffy, 2 hours later, bust into my office. Father Barnabas, we need to speak to you. Well, what is it, Chad and Buffy? We're furious. What's wrong? Nico and Maria don't hear enough Greek in the service. They're our friends. We love them. We're Orthodox Christians together. We insist you start using more Greek. For our friends, Nico and Maria, whom we love. Folks, let me tell you something. If you love each other, the language issue will take care of itself. It's not so much the language issue as it is the fact that you do not know what the Orthodox faith means. You learn that. We have tons. Your pastor has this kind of stuff all the time for your benefit, so that you won't be Orthodox by accident. You'll be Orthodox on purpose. And that'll take care of the language issue. But we can't hide from it. We've got to deal with it straight on, and we've got to be honest, especially with our kids. Somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
You know, Father, you were talking about your father-in-law.
Yes.
Saying, I belong to a very large Greek Orthodox church for many, many years. And belong to the Philoptomus, which you know.
Of course, the Ladies' Fellowship, yeah.
And the ladies decided that the church was just rather brand new. And it needed a plantitera, you know, the icon
of the Theotokos behind there, yeah.
And so that was the function. They were raising money to do this in this beautiful mosaic, okay? So they had, it was an Italian fellow that did the mosaics, and we all went to see it when it was finished. And the lady that was the president of our Philoptomus, born in this country, looked at it and she went, you know, the eyes of the Theotokos, are wrong. And the artist said, what's wrong? She said, they aren't Greek eyes. And the artist said, excuse me, I didn't know she was Greek.
Exactly. Yeah, she's a Hebrew girl.
It's just, yeah.
But gang, listen to me, this is not surprising in a faith, in a cultural faith that came here running for their lives, okay? The Romanians came here running for their lives. The Greeks came here running for their lives. The Russians came here running for their lives. The Serbians came here running for their lives. They were running for their lives. Or they were, in fact, for the most part, most of the immigrants, especially in the early 20th century, never intended to stay here. They always intended to go back home. That was always their intention. Make a little money here and go back home when things die down and when it's safe and I won't get shot at. That makes perfect sense. Every cultural group that has ever come here has done the very same thing. The reality is that Orthodoxy is meant to be an indigenous faith, which means that we take the treasures old and new and we are good stewards of what we received as gift, and we stay awake to the time that we're in now and translate those treasures so that this generation can understand it. Hard work. It's going to take more time, and it's going to take a lot of effort on our part. But are you going to do anything more important in your life? In your whole life, are you going to do anything more important than this? Not a thing. You're never going to cure cancer, and you're only going to keep people from dying right then. But they will die. By the way, did you know that every person Jesus healed in the Scriptures eventually died? Mm-hmm. Except our poor Lazarus. He had to have 2 funerals. 2 funerals! That's not fair. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you're going to touch on this later, but in today's just do it society, anything goes. How do we deal with, I have a family member who lives on the West Coast who's going to marry her partner, another woman.
Yeah.
And how do I deal with that without being judgmental?
Good luck. No, that's not fair. Folks, we always make a mistake when we think that this is easy. It's not meant to be easy. Anything that's actually worth something in your life, anything you've ever accomplished in your life, has been a challenge to achieve. I lost weight once. Lord have mercy. It was hell. I hated it. But it was hard work. I said that to say that this is hard work. So go ahead and abandon any notion that it's not going to be hard work. It's going to be hard work. The mystery of the Orthodox faith is, I love you, please don't die. I love you. By the way, folks, do you think you can make God to stop loving you?
No.
Sorry, you can't. I mean, again, like I said last night, some of you are good sinners. I'm sure you're fantastic at it. Pros. But if you can do something to exhaust the mercy of God, you're God. If you can do something to make God so angry at you that He doesn't want anything to do with you anymore, you're God. You have power over God. Now, again, I'm sure you're talented people, but none of you here are that good to have power over God. God's not the one with the problem. So God says to you what you say to everyone else. I love you, please don't die. And so whatever passion is killing me, my response to people whose passions are killing them or bringing disruption and causing pain and causing a lack of spiritual health, I want them to see me dealing with my own passions and putting them under the discipline of the faith so that I can sober up and be whole. And them seeing the health in my own life will make condemning words unnecessary. I love you, please don't die. Does that make sense? This is a hard path. This is a hard path. So I have a person that came to me asking for advice. Father, do I go to the wedding? Hard issue. I was asked to attend a wedding of a same-sex couple, 2 men that were getting married. I sent them a conciliatory note saying, I'm an Orthodox priest. If I can't do the wedding, I'm probably not going to attend it. Please understand. Of course, they never spoke to me again. Okay. That's the price of I love you, please don't kill yourself. I love you, please don't die. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
You make a wonderful point about how much God loves us. Growing up as a Greek Orthodox, we knew very little about the Bible. What little I did read was very frightening, especially in the Old Testament.
Yes.
It wasn't loving.
No.
It didn't sound like a loving God to me.
Exactly.
And so as I began to learn more and more about the things we should and shouldn't do in our faith, I couldn't help but think about a God who would do bad things to me because I didn't do the things that I was supposed to do in Orthodox.
Guys, it'd be different if this wasn't common. Did everybody hear what she was saying?
No.
Okay, what she was saying, this is not just in Orthodoxy, dear. This is American religion. We have this view of God as, I'm keeping tabs, boys. If you're not following the rules, if you're not checking all the boxes, that's demerits. You're going to be in trouble. And if you have too many demerits, hell for you. Gang, you can't love a terrorist. You can serve a terrorist. You can even do religious stuff to make sure that terrorist isn't angry with you. But you're never going to love him. And that is just the continuation of the lie to our mother and father in the garden that God is up to something. God's not really good. We do not participate in the impugning of the character of the Father. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. Ever under any circumstance. Now that doesn't mean, that's what I told a Baptist friend of mine who was a hellfire and brimstone boy. He preached a sermon one time. I don't know if you got Southern preachers you think I'm animated. This boy was nobody sat in the front row and just spit all over you. And he's angry all the time. God, I'm sorry. And a little bitty church, of course. I mean, I know who wants to live with that abuse all the time. But as I was listening to him talk, I told him, I said, brother, I'm going to be honest with you. I wish your idea of hell was real. It's a whole lot better than the Orthodox view of hell. What do you mean? Fire and brimstone and the devil with his pitchfork poking you and just torment day and night. I said, oh no, that's a kindergarten compared to the Orthodox understanding of hell. Hell in the Orthodox faith is being surrounded by God's unconditional, eternal, unmitigated, unfiltered love and hating every minute of it. But the purpose of the Orthodox faith is to teach you now how to stand in the fire of God's love and call it heaven. That's the difference. So please give me the fire and brimstone hell. That's a lot easier hell. Man, I can do that on 1 foot. That's easy. But the reality of the faith is much deeper than that. Now the question becomes, how do we communicate this in such a way that is faithful to the tradition? Because the thing about it is there's a great article that was out several years ago by a late Greek Orthodox theologian by the name of Kalamiros. And the article is called The River of Fire. Wonderful article. It's not perfect, just like anything that I write isn't perfect. Nearly perfect, but not quite perfect. And he talks about this. He says that humanity doesn't so much not believe in God nowadays as they do believe in God and they hate Him because they think He's a terrorist. They think He's angry. So it's not that they don't believe in God. Atheists, have you ever talked to an atheist? Atheists, they're the most angry people you ever met in your life. I asked one boy one time, he was just ranting and raving about how horrible God is. I said, well, He doesn't exist. Why do you care? Why are you so angry at this being that isn't there? That's kind of strange, don't you think? Have you considered getting mental counseling, for heaven's sake? Something's wrong here. Why are you so angry? But a figment of everybody's imagination. But it isn't that they don't believe God exists. They actually do believe. In fact, they want God to exist, and they're angry that the picture that they have of God is so sick. And that's because we've kept our mouths shut too much. And we haven't been normal Orthodox in this society. And we've bought into that foolish notion of God, that He's angry, and that if I don't do everything in the Orthodox way... By the way, let me ask you a question. Has anybody ever been to an Orthodox service before? Anybody here been to an Orthodox service? Sunday morning service? I'm just checking, guys, because, we do this every week. You know what I'm saying? I'm just wondering if you're paying attention. What happens when Father in the little entrance brings out the big gold book? You know what that... Gospel. That's it. That's what it's called. The Gospel. And he brings it out. And he comes in here and he stands there in front of this and he says, wisdom, all right. But he doesn't say, here's the legislation. Here's the rules. If you don't do them, God's going to throw you into hell like you deserve, you stinking, rotten, filthy sinners. He doesn't say that. He says, Sophia, wisdom. Let us give our attention. The reason why we Orthodox are so adamant about what we believe is because it's the wise way that humans were designed to live. To have our passions disciplined by the wisdom of the faith. It's not legislation. It's not the rule book that if you don't follow it, God's going to rub you out. Do you think it bothers God at all if people don't love Him? What does God need, children? What is He? Does He need help? Maybe He's fit. Maybe He needs some help up the stairs. But no. God's fine. He's not the one with the problem. I have to learn how to discipline my passions so that I can enjoy being with Him. And here's the wisdom on how to do that. Now, that's a real different way of looking at things than what you heard, right? It really is, isn't it? Some of you may be able to understand. You remember, especially, God's watching. God's watching. I mean, you'd think He was Santa Claus. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Oh, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. God the Son is going to put you in hell. No, that's not how that goes at all. But that's really the impugning of the character of the Father that has spread like wildfire. What is the old saying? A lie is around the world 3 times before the truth gets its pants on in the morning. That's what the Orthodox faith is supposed to be the remedy of, the antidote for. And it's when we aren't normal Orthodox that we have these kinds of misconceptions. Does that make sense? That's challenging. Yes, ma'am.
My question is about education.
Okay.
It seems to me that a lot of young people, they go to public schools and they start hearing about evolution.
Right.
And I'm not saying evolution is the only thing that pushes them away from...
I've met people who really probably did come from monkeys. I'm just going to be honest. They act like it.
Yeah. So I think there needs to be education that goes beyond maybe high school. Maybe I come from the Catholic tradition. I'm a convert, obviously. There's Catholic colleges, and not all of them are great, but I think a continuation.
They used to be.
Well, I know.
Yeah, not anymore.
That's really sad. But I think that there is a continuation into Orthodox colleges, not seminaries, but colleges.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's the reason why I love the fact that there's Hellenic College and the St. Catherine's on the West Coast. The challenge is this, and I'm going to be a bit contrarian, so forgive me. In a post-Enlightenment Western world, we think that the accumulation of information will solve our problems. How are we doing so far with that? Swing and a miss. The truth is, I've met people in Greece, and I'm sure there are in other countries too, but Greece is where I have the most experience for, that only have a 3rd grade education but know more about God than I ever will. Because it's not knowing about, it's about being in love. And so that's not bad, by the way. We need to do that because the gift of the mind and the gift of the intellect should be used as the gift that it is. That's a good thing. But the vast majority of Christians who turned the world upside down couldn't read. That's the reason why when my Protestant friends, we just need to read the Bible. We need to read the Bible. I said, well, you do realize that the vast majority of Christians who've loved God throughout the centuries couldn't read. They could have owned 17 Bibles. It wouldn't have mattered. Or they chained the Bible to the pulpit. Well, sure, it was encrusted with jewels, dingbat. They didn't want things stolen. And it was probably hand-copied. It was the most valuable thing in the village, for God's sake. So don't be stupid. Yeah, so the point is that it's great to learn. That's necessary. You know, me ranting and raving in front of you, that's really good. But you know what's the most valuable thing about this event? We're together. We're getting to know one another. We're sharing each other's lives. That's Orthodoxy, folks. And while this precious little Greek lady in Greece in the village of Karpenisi with a 3rd grade education couldn't understand theosis, and she didn't know about the hypostatic union, I could wax an elephant with the hypostatic union. I love that stuff. Spent over 100 grand on my education. I use that word only because I refuse to not get my money's worth out of my education. The hypostatic union. She didn't know any of that stuff, but she knew God in a way that was in her bones. And if I were to look at her and say, well, why don't you consider becoming a Protestant? She would look at me like I had a 3rd eye. She would literally say, I would have to stop being who I am to do that. That's Orthodox. That's normal Orthodoxy, folks. So that we need to do this. But we need to do this. Being together is the key.
I think the reality, though, is there's so many, everybody goes to high school.
Yeah. Which is really unusual. It's not a normal thing in the history of humanity. You're right.
And there's a lot of bad stuff being taught.
You better believe it. That's the reason why the best youth ministry in the church is an adult education ministry, because you got them more than I do. Do you understand? You got them more than I do. The colleges have them more than I do. But if I can get mom and dad to be serious about orthodoxy, I got a good chance of keeping the kids. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
I think we are our own worst enemies sometimes.
Well, yeah, you're humans, for God's sake.
Well, because young people come to our church. My son was going to get married, and he was insisting on getting married in the Orthodox Church.
Good.
He used to read the epistle every Sunday, and he was an altar server, and she was a non-denominational.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
But when he brought her to church, she couldn't understand anything.
Right.
And he didn't understand Serbian, so he couldn't tell her.
A lot of Serbians here, guys. Way to go. Serbians in the house.
We have a lot of family here. And
Believe me,
And
they
our
are.
people were
Good.
coming to church late. They
Sure.
were yapping and talking.
Well, yeah.
They were, and she said, I don't want to come to this church.
No, why would I?
Why would I want to come here? I don't understand it. The people come late, they're not respectful. My church people, but at the same time, everybody at my church knew my son, and he knew everybody at her church. They didn't know anybody.
Exactly. And it really does become a way for you to have a language. This is one of the reasons why I did a Journey to Fullness video series. I did it specifically because I wanted to introduce people who didn't know anything about Orthodoxy to the Orthodox faith, and I wanted to help my lifelong Orthodox get a language to talk about their faith so that they could tell people. Because what do I hear every time from I had a kid in seminary with me. Beautiful guy from Chicago. And in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, if you're in the metropolis of Chicago, then that automatically means you have the best chanting voice on the planet. The Byzantine chanters coming out of the Chicago metropolis are it's just like they don't even touch the ground when they walk. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Anyway, they say, well, that's in their own minds. But no, scrub that out of the corner if you don't mind. But so this kid comes up to me and says, oh, Barnabas, I wish I knew the Bible like you did. You know the Bible backwards and forwards. You got all this stuff memorized, blah, blah, blah. You know all this stuff. I wish I knew the Bible like you did. I said, brother, I wish I knew the Bible as well as you did. What? What do you mean? I said, do you know that by the way, do you know the Divine Liturgy pretty well? Yeah, I've been chanting it my whole life. I said, then you know that the Divine Liturgy is over 70% a direct or indirect quote from the Scriptures. The only deficiency you have is you don't know where it is. I can fix that in 10 minutes. Get us a concordance. Poof, we're done. In the next session, we're going to talk about good news. And I'm going to give you specific things, and I guarantee you, I promise you, we're going to stop here in just a second. I promise you, in the next session, you're going to hear stuff that surprises you. It's going to be counterintuitive. And you're going to hear me talk about, I'm not going to say it. Never mind. That's for next time. All right, one more and then we're going to stop. Ma'am.
I just have to share a story with
Go.
you from last night.
It's just us.
My brother,
Another Serbian?
Yeah.
Jesus, God, save us.
Sorry, we're all related.
That's my nieces.
My brother, the baby of us 10, moved to Nashville 17 years ago to become a music, which he has.
Oh, of course.
So one of the first times I go down to see him, it's the 4th of
Serbian
July.
country singer. I'm trying to put that in my head. Anyway.
He's a drummer.
He's a drummer.
Oh, he's a drummer. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anyway, he took me to this church he was going to, Bellevue Community Church. You know it.
Of course I do. I did my pastoral internship in my first stint in Protestant seminary in Nashville at Christ Church, so I know Bellevue well.
Well, I walked into
Church
this
of
place,
Christ.
and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
They had an arcade in the back for the
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
They had a Starbucks.
Yeah.
They had donuts. I mean, no cross in sight.
No,
It was like a big
let's don't get
circular
carried away. I mean, come on. That may give the impression it's Christian.
So then I
want
go
that back.
in, and it's like a big auditorium.
Sure, I
We're
know it
sitting
well.
there, the best live country music show. I mean,
smoke and all that stuff.
No cover? No cover? You didn't have to pay to go in? No cover.
And I'm sitting with my brother, and the reason he started going there was for connections and networking. But
of course, you better believe it. He should have gone to Christ Church. That's where the mom and daughter duo. What's their names?
The Judds?
The Judds. That's where they go to church. I never forget preaching a sermon there, and they came up afterwards, and the Judd daughter said, preacher, that was a really good sermon. That's it. That's
okay. So anyway, we're sitting there, and this big show goes on. The show's over, and out comes this dude in the nicest golfing outfit.
Sure, you better believe it. Yeah.
Oh, I was like...
That was his
and
vestments.
he's talking.
Yeah.
I said to my brother, who in the world is this? He goes, oh, he's the pastor. Get out.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe my eyes.
Yeah. He was in his vestments.
There was no crosses in this place. There wasn't one icon of Jesus. There was nothing.
No,
I said, does this place call himself a church? Yeah. He doesn't go there anymore. He's down, when he's in town, because he's, traveling.
Yeah.
He goes to St. Petka, the Serbian church down in
there
Nashville.
You are.
But yeah, my experience was...
But again, let me tell you something. What you saw was a liturgy.
Oh, there
wasn't a good liturgy.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't a full liturgy, but everybody has a liturgy. I had one guy tell me one time, he says, we don't have a liturgy at our church. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you meet every Sunday? Yeah. Honey, you got a liturgy. Do you start at the same time every Sunday? Oh, yeah. You got a liturgy. Does the preacher preach every Sunday? Yeah. You got a liturgy. You don't have a good liturgy. You don't have a healthy liturgy. Your liturgy's too small, but you got one. Well, we don't believe in tradition. Do you go to church every Sunday? Well, yeah. Well, you've got a tradition. Not a full tradition. It's too small. If you try to pour the glory of the Christian faith into it, and it's going to bust it all to pieces, it's just too little. It's like trying to pour the ocean into a thimble. It's too small. But you got one. You got a liturgy. You got a tradition. Nothing wrong with liturgy and tradition. The key is make sure that it's full and make sure that it's complete and make sure that it's katholikos. You know what the word katholikos is, don't you? It's the Greek word that we transliterate Catholic from. We don't translate. It's like hallelujah and amen. It means too much to translate it. So we just transliterate it into English as Catholic. Katholikos, according to the whole, full, well-rounded, mature, grown-up, healthy, complete. That's why we don't translate it. It means too much. So that's normal. He was wearing his vestments. The golf outfit was the vestments of the pastor.
He was holding the Bible.
But it was an accident. Don't trust me. He
drove a Harley.
Yeah, of course he did. I would too if my wife would let me. But the reality is that all of them had vestments. All of them have. Everybody has vestments. Everybody has tradition. Everybody has a liturgy. The only issue is it full? Is it well-rounded? Is it healthy? Does it produce saints? My contention would be that it is normal orthodoxy that produces saints, because it is normal orthodoxy that teaches me how to tame my passions so that they become my servants and not my masters. That's why orthodoxy is invaluable, and why it's worth your best, why it's worth your time, and why you better stop taking it for granted.